Hello, jewelry lover. My name is Bella Naiman, and I'm the founder of New York City Jewelry Week. Welcome to this virtual program, part of NYCJW 24. The theme for the seventh annual edition is Wander and Wander, and it reflects the multifaceted nature of jewelry as both art and personal expression. Wander captures the awe-inspiring craftsmanship behind each piece, the dazzling, delicate, or bold details that turn your head in admiration. Wander invites you to explore the wonderful and wild creative journeys behind the jewelry. It's not just about the finished piece, it's about the adventure it took to get there. Designers experiment, push boundaries, and play with ideas and materials. And this year, New York City Jewelry Week takes participants to see it all unfold. Every necklace, ring, and bracelet is a passport to a new world where innovation reigns and imagination knows no limit. So we hope that these programs will take you on that journey and are your passport as well. Sit back, enjoy, and while these are not live, we welcome your comments. So please don't hesitate to drop us a line, whether it's email or Instagram, or even get in touch with some of the incredible curators, artists, writers that have really worked very hard to bring you this program. So thanks very much. And we also hope to see you out in New York. Bye.
So, Noor, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here for New York City Jewelry Week. My name is Mazzi Odu, as you know, and we are really, really delighted to have you here discussing your jewelry story so far. So, without further ado, I think the presentation, you sent through a presentation, I am going to ask you our first question, which is, can you share with us your earliest jewelry memory?
Hi, Mazzi. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm excited to take part in this.
Yes.
My first jewelry memory is actually, as you can see on the slide, the first picture where I'm wearing a red sweater and I'm trying on my mom's pearl necklace and a coral necklace.
I love it. So you were already mixing.
I actually remember that
brilliant.
day. I know that it's not just because I know the picture, but I remember that day, and I used to be so fascinated. I thought I was going into some sort of a treasure chest, discovering all these things and putting them on. And I loved, my grandmother also wore a lot of jewelry, and I was very inspired by that. And I used to also, I loved making beaded necklaces and making jewelry out of paper and cutting things out and mixing things together. I had a lot of fun with that growing up.
No, it's so interesting because I think as someone like yourself who's now ended up being very much both, your pieces are known to be, obviously exquisitely made, but there's a playfulness. So it's really wonderful to see that thread of, even as a child, you were, experimenting and playing with color and texture and mixing gemstones and such. And just this was sort of coming almost organically. But, I'd really be curious to know, when did you feel in your heart that this was going to be a path that you would take further and that, feeling called to be an actual jewelry designer?
So I always loved jewelry, and I was always drawn to gemstones, and have always been fascinated by them. But it was, for a long time, it was something that was alongside whatever I was doing. And at university, I studied art history. So I did my BA in art history, and then I furthered my studies in jewelry later on. I was very interested in gemstones, and I wanted to learn more about diamonds and colored stones. So I went to the GIA in London, where I did a diamond course and then a stones course, a short business course, and also a design course. And as I was taking this design course, I discovered how much I love sketching, designing, and the ideas started flowing from there. Then I wanted to learn more, so I went to Central St. Martin's in London, where I studied jewellery design as a master's. I did a multi-practice master's called MA Jewellery, Furniture or Ceramics. And
Yes.
I had already started my brand as a small collection that grew organically. I was working with my mom at first, and the collection was picked up by Browns and Harrods, and the response was very positive.
Wow.
That developed into starting a proper company, setting it up, and I was doing that simultaneously with the masters. And then when I finished the masters, I really started developing several collections a year, and doing it in a more serious way, I would say. So yeah, it's been 14 years
interesting.
now.
I know that's really, really amazing, because what I hear when I'm listening to that is it was a passion, obviously the innate childhood passion, but then secondary, the idea, and I think a lot of jewelry designers don't necessarily do this, having a deep understanding of the business side, and then also a deep understanding of the gemstone side, which you obviously got from, the training that you did at Central St. Martin's and also at the GIA. And then also in the background, which I think is really interesting, is you almost were getting proof of concept and validation by your experimental micro collections, if we'll call them that, being so well received at Browns, and Harrods and things like that. Because immediately it's like, okay, this is not just my friends buying it. It's got legs on it. And I really wanted to talk about that design journey. And we're going to go for the next slide, which will help us, because you are very much known for referencing ancient belief systems. One sees it in the Kanda collection, in the Prana collection, and it's really interesting if you could share in your own journey why it's so important to infuse within your design ethos and your explorations ancient belief systems. And you've got some rather beautiful pieces to illustrate the point with, which is great.
Thank you. So, as you know, I come from, my academic background was an art history background. So that's also something that I've always been interested in, learning about different cultures, learning about their artistic practices, their symbols, their spiritual practices. And and it's really to make the point something very simple. What I've noticed from traveling and from researching and from looking into these different cultures, there's broad themes that appear that really are, when you look at the big picture, they really are the same. Different cultures use geometric shapes to express certain symbols and certain ideas across cultures, whether it's ancient Hindu culture, as you see in the Navratna necklace, the first one on the left.
Yes.
Stones are used. Stones are believed to hold healing properties and are used to represent different concepts and different symbols, different things. And also you'll notice that certain stones like lapis lazuli or carnelian were also used in the ancient Egyptian culture, also as amulets, as talismans. And this is something that I'm always interested in digging deeper into, and understanding the power of these symbols, their meanings, and translating them into jewelry. So that's really an ongoing theme across my work and my collections. And I always try to do it in a way that it's a suggestion. So this is the story behind the pieces, the research behind the pieces, but it's a suggestion. So you might buy a piece because you gravitate towards its design, or because you really care about the meaning of a specific symbol. And in a way, we've throughout my collections, I've created sort of a universal language of symbols, if that makes sense, inspired by all these different cultures.
It really does, because I think what you've touched upon, which is how there is definitely a symbiosis in ancient belief structures, if we take away our own innate bias or traditional system we may or may not have grown up in. But what I love is how you've translated this into pieces that are both easy to wear, if dare I say it, because some of your pendants, and I've seen people who bought them, they're very easy to wear. This is not jewelry that sits in a vault and you wear once a year. And I think that sort of ties in with this idea of system and belief. I mean, the same way someone might, back in the day wear, a cross or a Star of David or a hand of Fatima. What I love is that with your pieces, you're exploring this right across continents, across, Asia, South Asia, and all these traditions. And what's also interesting, and I think this sort of brings us very neatly to my next question for you, is your very audacious use of semi-precious and precious stones and sometimes ceramics, and basically mixing different, both ancient ways of making with very cutting edge ways of making. And I just want to know what was the genesis for you deciding I'm going to do things like, mix semi-precious stones with precious stones. I'm going to challenge people's notions of intrinsic value. And also I'm going to create pieces that very much are integrated in people's lives. I'd really love to hear your take and what sort of prompted that choice in your design.
Thank you. So my first collection was called Touche du Bois. It was called Touch Wood. That was inspired by the concept of knocking on wood for protection and for good luck in the Middle East, which is prevalent in the Middle East. And the reason why I start with this is that first collection was very much about the material of wood and combining it and contrasting it with diamonds and colored stones. I love materials and techniques and what the possibilities what the possibilities that are on offer when you can by looking at by looking at traditional jewelry craftsmanship techniques and exploring how to push the boundaries of the craft and what one can do with these very traditional ways of making jewelry, and how you can develop and create more innovative pieces with those existing techniques. I'm also very grateful to produce in India, in Jaipur, which is one of the most important. It's the most important cutting center in the world for colored stones. So,
I was going to say you're in the citadel. You're in the citadel.
There. Yes, exactly.
You really are in the citadel.
Yes, and Jaipur is a very special place in terms of artisanal work and craftsmanship, and I'm lucky to have been able to work in a very intimate way with small scale artisans, whether they're hand carvers or miniature painters or enamel artists, goldsmiths, etc. And that has allowed me to explore many different avenues of making, even though I'm not a maker I haven't been formed as a jewelry maker, but I love working very closely in an intimate way with the artisans, and together we've been able to develop fun ways of making jewelry. And I think that the strict rules of traditional craftsmanship in more contemporary jewelry can be broken, and it's okay to mix precious materials with organic materials such as wood or ceramic. And
I think it's such a modern response, and I think it's also in many ways it speaks to I think very much one sees it across the jewelry landscape, this desire for things that are not mass made, things that have an element of the human in the making process. And also because you're an independent jeweler, you're a small house, so you are able to go on these journeys and discourses, and one sees it really clearly in all of the collections thus far. You can sort of
Thank
see
you.
there's an element of an intentionality. Oh no, definitely. And you can sort of see that this, I mean, you can definitely see the story also in your own interests, and also your story as from a research perspective, you know, being knowledgeable about art and your travel, which we'll come to later. It's sort of all sayings very much is translated into pieces that, you know, really speak that, because sometimes you get, I mean, not shady, sometimes people can write a blurb about their collection and it doesn't match, or say something about their collection, but there's a really clear through line, and it just, you know, speaks to you know, the depth of your research and your intentionality. And you know, so I mean, it's really lovely to see. I mean, I love those earrings, absolutely gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
Really,
With
really
the emerald
beautiful.
slices.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for emeralds, and emeralds are my birthstone, so I always sort of seem to gravitate when I see when I see them on a
Oh,
screen or
great. Well, you're I'm sure you'll enjoy seeing our next we're about to launch a collection of pieces, of one of a kind pieces that
oh,
on which we collaborated with Muzo Emeralds.
oh my goodness, that's be still my beating heart. Oh my goodness, that sounds amazing. But you know, on to our next question, which ties into the theme. So this year's theme for New York City Jewelry Week is Wonder, WONDER, and Wonder as in WANDR. And so this question really speaks to the first wonder. And I want to know which era, if there is a specific era that has really spoken to you as one that's ignited wonder in you as an individual, as a collector, as a designer, as a creator. And if so, if you could share that with us and examples from that era. And I see some already on the screen, so it'd be really lovely to hear from you, Noor.
I mean, I love many different eras in jewelry. I think, I mean, I'm very interested in ancient Egyptian jewelry because of it's so loaded with meaning and symbols, and also the way the jewelry accompanied the dead to the afterlife, and this whole narrative around gemstones and jewelry. And I also love all the carved scarabs and the carved. It was really the first stone carvings. And I also love Art Deco for all the geometric shapes and more like through in Art Deco jewelry, the introduction of more like clean cut lines and geometry, of course. And I also love the craftsmanship, the Art Nouveau, more figurative René Lalique.
Yes, the Art Nouveau, yes, absolutely.
And the more for the textures and the colors, enamel and all this like beautiful figurative and enamel work. And I think, and one of my favorite contemporary jewelers, I would say, is Taffin, who's
goodness,
based
you're in my head.
These diamonds.
I mean, if James is amazing, I mean, absolutely incredible. I love his pieces too, and I think it's interesting though. There isn't, you know, you loving the notions that you see in Egyptian jewelry, and even this idea of an heirloom that goes with you into the hereafter. And then, you know, sort of the modern context is the heirloom that you hand down to, you know, living descendant. So it's really interesting seeing how that sort of informed in your work. And then obviously the tactility and the curvaceous nature of the Art Nouveau movement, and the precision, because I can sort of see that precision in the sort of Art Deco with this real play of light. And, you know, this, you sort of see that with your Prisma collection, which I think really spoke to kaleidoscopes of light. So you just sort of amped it with utilizing colored gemstones so exquisitely. And you know, so it's really interesting seeing that as well. And I just also want to ask you about, I mean, you touched upon it earlier actually, this notion of pieces, the gemstones specifically, and the choice being informed by both meditative purposes, either be it historic or current, this notion of wearing them for protection as a talisman, or also wearing them for, you know, balance, spirit, a sort of like a spiritual leaf motif on the body. And I wanted to ask you, you know, why was that an avenue that also, I mean, if you can expand a little bit more and, you know, illustrating your points of these beautiful pieces.
So crystals and gemstones, from a medicinal healing perspective,
Yes,
I believe that
absolutely.
these materials that are a gift from the earth, have different energies and different frequencies, and when we wear them on our bodies, I believe in the notion that gemstones and crystals can enhance our well-being. And
Definitely.
so I reference the healing properties of gemstones through my work. I do a lot of research of their what they represented in ancient cultures, but also across that, and what different stones, which chakra they correspond to, which energies they correspond to. For example, here we have our anahata earrings, the little hearts. They're made with rose quartz. Rose quartz is very much linked to feminine energy. And in the middle, you'll see our rock crystal pendant, which is clear quartz, and that encompasses, it's sort of the master healer stone because it's clear color. So it's also believed to like calm us, and we don't even necessarily need to know this when we're buying a piece of jewelry, because I feel like sometimes we gravitate towards a crystal, or we gravitate towards
it will speak to you. I'm one of those people as well. I think a piece will actually call you. There's obviously an aesthetic inclination, but then I think underpinning it will sometimes be metaphysical as well, where you just find yourself innately drawn to a piece. So that totally makes sense.
Yes, I believe that very much.
And it's interesting because when you were saying about the research, now is this something that you feel, obviously as a designer, and you said it's an ongoing theme that you want to continue to explore? Do you almost feel that in some way, and this is like an off the cuff question, sometimes people think, oh, jewelry is just about, you know, adorning oneself to look great, but you are also proposing that jewelry can also make you feel great and feel better and be operating in your optimum self, which I think is a slightly different thing to, oh, I just want to look really fantastic and just be slaying.
It's different, but it's linked also. If a pair of earrings makes you feel like you look great, then you also it's linked to feeling great as well.
Yeah, that's why I find it's quite interesting, because underpinning it with the research, I think it's an interesting, like it's a two-pronged, you know, it's like a double or quit situation where you both get the aesthetic feels and then you also get the medicinal feels that are rooted in your research and also ancient wisdom, which I think is really, really interesting. And, you know, obviously all of this research, Noor, is underpinned by epic levels of travel. I think that we need to talk about here, because that's the other part of the NYC Jewelry Week theme. And you travel extensively, and it's writ large on both your jewelry and your design aesthetic. It's also there in your personal style for those who might be watching and who might, you know, have spied you on the gram or wherever else or in real life, that you sort of see the travels are with you. And I'd really like to ask how travel has informed your jewelry practice, both as a designer, both in terms of sourcing materials, and you've got some really beautiful slides which I hope you'll take us through of these places you've gone to and how they've inspired your work.
So on this page, I've put a few images of from recent trips that I've been on to Laos and Cambodia, and also to Bali. I mean, travel. I think travel opens us up as humans, because it exposes us to different environments, different cultural practices, different artistic practices. And especially if you are able to take the time to immerse yourself in these different places, there's a lot to learn. And it not just in terms of informing my jewelry designs, but also in as a learning experience. I think it's so enriching, and as a designer, I mean, being exposed to different shapes and colors, and I'm very interested in rituals also. So whenever I travel, let's say in my recent trips to Cambodia, I was very inspired by the temples and the aesthetics of the Buddhist carvings and the Hindu carvings on these stone structures, but also very inspired by the different rituals in these different places, and their take on spirituality and on objects that are used. And I am a very curious person, and it coinciding with the theme of the jewelry week this week. You were talking about wonder. I think this sense of wonder that that really feeds on these different experiences and these different trips.
I think so. I think it's something really interesting because, what I've noticed from, the images you've shared here is you're not just, and this is again, not meant to be any personal indictment. I think when one travels, it's all very well to sort of stay in a smart hotel, and you will get very much a sort of surface level experience of the country, wherever the country may be. Like if one was to come here to Lagos, for example, in Nigeria, and you just chilled somewhere, smart hotel, you wouldn't really get Nigeria. And what I love about what you're saying, when
general,
you're observing,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead, and then I'll get to my point. But
no, I was just thinking about sort of what you were talking about observing, the religious buildings, so seeing the carvings on a Buddhist temple, or sort of seeing the materials that people use in rituals, whether it's the meal, the family meal, whether it's how they eat, and all of those things kind of inform you on the emotional landscape and the interiority of a place. And then it's sort of, like you said, it feeds into your own life experiences. And I imagine as a designer, I'm not a designer, I'm just imagining this will all sort of percolate in the background. So when you come home and you start sketching, all of that imagery and all those sensory experiences will be imbued in your pieces. Because I am imagining that. But would you? Am I close, or am I far off the mark?
No, you're very close. You're very close. And I think going back to your point that you were saying earlier, organizing a trip through a mainstream travel agency and just going on a generic tour of somewhere, you end up missing the little moments that are in between. And that's why when I do travel, I research everything, I read, I ask different people, I try to get lots of different sources of information, and then make my own idea of what I think I'll find interesting. And I really try to create in advance, to create these journeys, these adventures, as like in a specific way, so that I get to experience the place that I'm in the most authentic way possible. I think that's something that really matters to me and that inspires me a lot.
No, definitely you can see it. And there's also, like, we've already seen in some of the pieces you've shared, there's an adventurous nature to your work. I think, both the interplay, whether it's some more colored gemstone pieces, the mixed methodology, and you can sort of see that this is somebody who has seen a lot, but has also chosen to learn a lot, because you can see a lot and just still stay in your little square bubble or cuboid of understanding. But it's that exposing yourself and also being open enough to imbibe whatever it is that you've been exposed to, which I think is really exciting to see. And so I'm almost coming to the end of my time, Noor. I could sit here and chat with you for hours.
Oh, thank you.
Sadly,
I really
we can't do that today.
Talking to you.
but I would love to ask you a question, which is a little bit of a facetious question to ask somebody who both makes jewelry and collects jewelry and, has been exposed to, private collections of your mummy and your grandmother. And so you've seen a lot of beautiful things. But I want to ask you, if you were to pick 3 jewels that speak to the theme, and you have very dutifully selected 3 jewels that speak to this week's theme, and if you can take us through them and share the the rationale behind your choice, which was very mean of me to make you pick it 3, because a bit unfair, but we have to keep these things tight and tidy.
So the first piece is pendant from our latest collection, Kanda, and it is made with glitter enamel on mother of pearl, and then covered with carved crystal and set with colored stones and diamond baguettes on top. And the pattern is inspired by optical art, and
Yes, it's
and
it's giving me Bridget Riley vibes.
Bridget Riley,
That's why
Passarelli. So the
yeah,
inspiration within this
yes.
realm, these artists, and we've experimented with the patterns by creating patterns, flat patterns, and then placing carved stones on top, and creating optical illusions with the patterns getting distorted from the carved stones. And then the second piece shows another technique of craftsmanship, and it's miniature painting. So they're hand painted on the colorful, the colors the color gradient that you see is hand painted on mother of pearl, and then there is a rock crystal cabochon placed on top, and an opal set within the crystal cabochon, which is that effect that you see. And this is also inspired by psychedelic visions and of art and the play of light. And the oval stone that's set on the side sort of represents a seed that's within these like spirals that are invisible, because it comes from these spirals that intersect. The original drawing was spirals that intersect, and now it's just the stone in the middle, and they're set with diamonds. And then the third piece is hexagonal amethyst. Amethyst has very strong, very powerful healing properties.
Yes.
And, it's all about also the number 6 and the hexagon shape, and it's set within a carved amethyst and colored stones, and has enamel on the back. And it's the shape represents. The shape is called the Merkaba star. So yeah, that's.
And tell us a bit more about the Merkaba.
So the Merkaba star.
Yes, please.
The Merkaba star was used in ancient Egypt, and also across different esoteric practices, and it's represents triangles that are pointing upwards and triangles that are pointing downwards, and represents the balance between masculine and feminine energy, and the concept of ether also.
Wow, that is absolutely exquisite, and it's really sort of showing that. I love the fact. I mean, I love this multi craft techniques, and setting stones within stones, and people will think, oh, carved stones and cut gemstones, oh, that's a VCA thing, and yes, they do it, but I love how you again, like with having the freedom when you are an independent house, to really sort of take it to the next level, with the enamel that's got the glitter enamel, and and just really sort of adding the diamond baguette. So you just have that opportunity, I think, to be even more experimental in a notion that has been seen in other jewelry houses, but sort of further expanded upon in your design universe. And that sort of brings me to my last question of today. And it's you can answer any which way you like. And for you, Noor, what does jewelry mean to you?
So, I mean, it's so jewelry to me. First of all, it's jewelry is something I have a very intimate relationship with. It's to me is like an extension of myself. I wear the way I wear jewelry. I put it on. I never take it off. I sleep with it, and it sort of becomes like an extension of me. But also, jewelry is also the craft. It's the practice that I have chosen to translate my passions and my ideas, and so it's sort of a medium towards that I used as a medium to that translates my creative expression through jewelry.
That is
So yeah.
a really be it's that is really, really profound. You know, this notion of it being both elementally you, but also being the conduit by which you share knowledge, you share your heart, you know, with the world. You obviously give them an opportunity also to have a little bit of that in their world, because obviously they can buy a piece. So I think that's really, and it speaks to how we started, Rich, really, when you were talking about how when you first started, when your early childhood memories, this idea of transformation and wonder and expression, and having this pieces of jewelry as a means, as a conduit of that expression. So thank you so much, Noor. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, and thank you so much for coming and joining us here at NYC Jewelry Week. And we hope to see you again very, very soon. Take care.
Thank you, Mazzi. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and I hope I'll see you
Awesome.
soon too. Good luck and enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.